YouTube, what's up? I've heard your secret desire to get a complete dissertation on the Warcraft 3 hero, the Pitlord. And I have come from the darkness of my pit to tell you all you wanted and needed to know about the Pitlord. So let's jump into it. Let's start with the lore. It all started with Sargeras. He's a fallen titan and he approached the Eredar with promises of power and knowledge in exchange for their allegiance. The Eredar's Archimand and Kil'jaeden accepted his offer to start beginning to form the Burning Legion. The Pitlords were the first among such creatures to join the Burning Legion, being recruited from the trackless wastes of the twisting Nether. Pitlords are powerful demons from the Annihilan race and revel in the suffering of all other living beings. That's nice. They serve as commanders and generals, heralding legions of demonic forces into battle against the mortal races of the various living. They are vaguely centaur-like in appearance, sporting a quadrupedal lower body, with an upper body reminiscent of that of a human who's into pre-workouts, chicken fillet, broccoli, and raw eggs. General description of the hero's use cases. Where does a Pitlord generally feature? Well, the Pitlord is a strength hero with a large health pool. Among the 8 Tavern Heroes, Pitlord is by far the tankiest hero with the largest health pool, the largest HP stat gain per level, and a spell that further reduces enemy damage dealt around him. He's a total unit of a tank that has various area of effect abilities that deal damage or reduce enemy damage. Like all other Warcraft 3 heroes, the Pitlord has 3 basic abilities and an ultimate ability as well. Let's talk about each of the 4. His first ability is Rain of Fire. Rain of Fire is a channeled ability that will cast an area of effect, channeled wave, area of effect damage. He can cast 6, 8 or 10 waves of Rain of Fire, and each of those will do damage to units standing underneath it in a moderate circle. Any unit touched by the Rain of Fire will be burning for 3 seconds for a very small amount of damage. This is a pretty straightforward area of effect channel ability that is similar to Blizzard and Flame Strike, and it does half damage to buildings, so it's not as effective there. Rain of Fire does not deal any magic damage to magic immune units. The second ability is Howl of Terror. Howl of Terror causes the Pitlord to let loose a shriek, a terrifying howl that makes enemies cower in fear and reduces the damage of units around him by 30, 40 and 50% depending on how many levels he has in the ability. While Howl of Terror looks like it is the perfect ability for a value point, this is only partially true. You see, the first ability in Howl of Terror drops enemy damage dealt by 30%, and the next one by 40%. Level 3 is a 50% drop, so it looks like you're getting 30% damage reduction from an enemy, and then only 10, and then only 10. But the reality is that you're comparing a total damage dealt of 70%, and you're comparing that to the total amount of damage dealt of 60%, which is actually a 14.66% drop in damage dealt. Going from 60% damage to 50% damage is a drop of 16.67%. So it is still true that the first ability has the largest relative impact with a 30% damage drop, and the next ones give 14 and 16% damage drop. So it is true that Howl of Terror is best as a value point, and this is true, and a value point means taking one ability point in a certain skill instead of getting multiple or maxed out points. Having one in Howl is very strong. This is not just true because of the mathematical reasons that I just delineated, but also because the counter to whatever level ability Howl of Terror is to dispel the magic, the debuff that is on the units of the opponent. If they dispel themselves, this works in the exact same way, whether or not it's level 1 or level 2. So in order to get rid of the ability, the same treatment is required, and therefore you might as well have a lower level ability because of that. Nonetheless, you can still max it out if your goal is to reduce enemy damage dealt against you. His third ability is Cleaving Attack. When the Pitlord does a basic attack, he's going to apply 40, 65 or 90% damage to secondary targets, in a splash damage in a cone shape behind the primary target. Interestingly, it doesn't matter what armor type or armor amount the targets behind the initial targets have. Nor does it matter how much armor the initial target has when deciding how much damage you do with cleave on the units behind. Whether there's a peasant or a paladin with 1,000,000 armor standing behind the initial target, they receive 90% of the base damage from a level 3 cleaving attack that a Pitlord is doing, just as it is advertised to be doing. Only the primary attack target will have the usual damage versus armor calculations and armor type calculations. So in order to min-max the primary damage, attack any low target as you normally would, and that's only pertaining to the primary attack damage to the primary target. To min-max the total amount of damage, don't fret about who your primary target is. It doesn't matter how much armor it is carrying. Simply go for the widest spread of applying the cone-shaped area of effect of cleave. If your eyes recently glassed over in a faraway stare and you assumed a trance-like state, wake up now. Conclusion is that attack whoever will apply the largest spread of area of effect cleave damage, as the initial target, armor, and anyone else's armor totally doesn't matter insofar as giving cleave damage. The fourth and final ability is Doom. This is his ultimate ability. It is perhaps the most interesting ability for the Pitlord, as you'll have it the least often, but it requires the most amount of practice in order to use it effectively. Casting Doom on any unit will do many things. It will consign it to a certain death. Doom cannot be cast on heroes for this reason. The afflicted unit is going to have a very bad time. The unit is not just silenced. It is silenced, but it's not just silenced. Most abilities are also disabled, such as critical strike and evasion. The unit is also slowed by 50%, and the doomed unit will assume a health decay of 40 health per second from the effects of Doom that will expedite the aforementioned destination of assured destruction. The unit can still be healed, but you cannot cleanse away the Doom effect in any way, ergo the name Doom. It is not, after all, mildly inconvenient temporary bowel movement, which a quick visit to the Frozen Throne might solve. Upon death, which will happen, eventually, the corpse will spawn a demonic Doom Guard that will be alive for 120 seconds. It is a 1600 HP summonable that possesses the following abilities: Dispel Magic, War Stomp, Cripple, and Rain of Fire. Additionally, the Doom Guard has a Chaos attack damage type, which deals 100% to all sources, and can become ranged when attacking air units. So you can now Rain of Fire with your Doom Guard on the same target you are Rain of Firing with the Pitlord, so you can Rain of Fire on your Rain of Fire. Cripple does a massive 75% movement slow, 50% attack speed slow, and War Stomp does a 3-second area of effect stun, which stuns heroes for just 2 seconds. Then there's Dispel Magic that can remove buffs, debuffs in an area of effect, and also deals 200 damage to summoned units. Rain of Fires is just like the level 1 Pitlord Rain of Fire in that it does 6 waves, though I don't think it does burn damage. The Doom Guard ultimate ability can be cast on magic immune units, such as Destroyers, Dryads, and Spellbreakers. Additionally, the Doom Guard itself, although it is a summonable, doesn't take any damage from Dispel Magic, such as Abolish Magic, Wisps, Disenchant, etc. Which is unlike the item-sourced Doom Guard, that can be found as a particular high-level drop on certain Warcraft 3 melee maps. That one is dispellable, but this Doom Guard is not. Note that you can also cast Doom on your own units if you found any of your units to be particularly deserving of such a cruel fate. So beware of misclicks in frantic battles, my friends. The Pitlord is a Tavern Hero, and because this is the first Tavern Hero that we're treating in one of these hero spotlights, I would like to have a small note on Tavern Heroes as well. The Pitlord is a neutral hero available to anyone from the tavern and is recruitable once per player and available to be recruited instantly from the tavern at 2 minutes and 15 seconds of game time approximately. In other words, at 14:20 of the in-game day and night clock. Normal altar heroes, from an altar that was not power built by a human with multiple peasants, so, normal undead, night elf, orc, and human altars, can come out at the earliest at roughly 1 minute 57 seconds. So if the altar hero time is 1:57 and the tavern hero time is 2:15, that is 18 seconds later than an altar hero can come out. This is generally a disincentivization by Blizzard to make sure that Tavern Heroes aren't too OP. After all, they start at the tavern, which means that any travel time from your hero in your base to their base is cut down by approximately half if the tavern is in the middle of the map. They could be too powerful as a rush hero had there not been that small artificial delay. However, this can be an advantage. If the area that you're headed towards, which is your opponent's base, on a particularly longitudinal map, or if you're headed to a creep camp that is very near the center of the map, rather than being 18 seconds late, you may only be 10 seconds late, if the area you want to go to is 8 seconds more in the proximity of the tavern than of where your altar would be in your own base. However, if you're going back to a creep camp that is near your starting location, you take the 18-second delay and then you add the extra walking time that it would take, and that is your actual delay of going for a Tavern Hero first. This could be something like 25 seconds. As a conclusion, a Tavern Hero is 15 to 25 seconds slower to where you want to be on the map on average. When we're speaking about Tavern Heroes, including the Pitlord as a second or a third hero, it is of course 100% a tempo advantage, as right upon reaching tier 2, you will be immediately able to recruit the Pitlord and he'll be immediately at your disposal. Sometimes players may decide to go for a Tavern Hero over one of the more traditional and preferable altar heroes just because it gives them a 55-second tempo advantage. If this hero is being used in an attack, you can shave off another 20 seconds in order to move to the opponent's base, so it could be as much as a 75-second tempo advantage. If I'm going Farseer first and I'm going to get Shadowhunter second, Firelord could be there 75 seconds faster. Therefore, Tavern Heroes are excellent for rushing. However, as you'll find out later, Pitlord isn't that much of a rushing hero, so this part doesn't matter as much for him. It is nice to get to start to creep him faster though, if he is a second or third hero. Let's go over to a more detailed description of specifically the Pitlord's use cases. Who is the Pitlord, what is the Pitlord, and what's his favorite flowers? So the Pitlord is most commonly trained as a second hero in an Orcish army, to support a Shadowhunter first opening. He's very tanky, coming out with 750 health and 3 armor, but more about the finer stats later. He's tanky. He's excellent at creeping with first ability Cleave, and he's able to mitigate incoming damage with Howl of Terror, which has great synergy with the Shadowhunter's Healing Wave. Reduce enemy damage, heal up any damage that does come through with Healing Wave. We can also see Pitlord second from humans very occasionally, or we could see Pitlord third from various different races and players to provide Howl of Terror as a support ability to drop enemy damage dealt. While the Pitlord doesn't interact very well with enemy air units, on average, as Cleave cannot hit air units, Howl of Terror can be a great help in a large-scale Hippogriff against Gargoyle battle, dropping enemy damage by 30% in such a situation. Overall, Pitlord is quite the spectacle whenever he gets made in a game of Warcraft 3, because he's relatively uncommon. While he can be very powerful, I've rated him as tier C in my hero tier list, which is also viewable on this channel. Pitlord can interact with enemy air units, such as by using Rain of Fire to target a cluster of air units, or using Howl of Terror to provide support, but he's generally not the preferred option when dealing with enemy air. Better options include Goblin Alchemist, Naga Sea Witch, and Pandaren Brewmaster. Cleave does not affect air, even if you give the Pitlord a Lightning Orb or an Orb of Venom in order to be able to target air. There will not be any cleave damage on any air units. However, if you ensnare enemy air units and bring them to the ground with a Crypt Fiend or a Raider, you can hit them with your cleave, so that part is pretty nice. In terms of his role, Pitlord's primary skill is usually Howl of Terror or Cleave, but there have been some cases where Pitlord gets made as a third hero. For instance, undead players have often gone Death Knight first, Lich second, and then Pitlord third in order to break peasant and tower clusters on an expansion which the undead is trying to rush down. Opening with a Rain of Fire can get some pretty good damage dealt in conjunction with Frost Nova on the peasants that are trying to repair towers. Meanwhile, the fiends are trying to shoot the tower down. Conceptually, the Pitlord is very similar to the Blade Master in that he benefits from defensive items, movement speed, and attack damage, as well as loving to have a healer standing behind him. The best healers for him are Shadowhunter and Death Knight. Death Knight can give him the Death Coil, because like the Dark Ranger from the Tavern, Pitlord has an undead status, which means he can be healed by Death Coil, he will regenerate extra while standing on Undead Blight, and he cannot be healed by Holy Light, which makes him a poor pairing for humans in general. The usual spec of skills that you go for with the Pitlord is going to be Cleave and Howl. It has a better synergy and it's more effective together than something like Rain of Fire with another. Rain of Fire is a poor match with Cleave because Rain of Fire is a channeled ability where he will cast 6 to 8 waves of fire, Rain of Fire, and during this time Pitlord cannot make use of Cleave as he's channeling the ability. You could also go Rain of Fire and Howl of Terror. Howl of Terror is an instant cast which allows him a lot of time for cleaving, but you could also do Howl of Terror into Rain of Fire. You do a quick howl and then you get to channeling your Rain of Fire. But this is a very mana expensive route to go for, and the Pitlord starts only with 210 mana and has a very low intelligence gain per level. So the best spec by far is to do a quick howl to drop enemy damage and then get to cleaving. There's also a cool non-meta strategy by Undeads, which constitutes going for a Death Knight first with a couple of Fiends and then supporting a Pitlord second with Necromancers with Unholy Frenzy, giving the Pitlord lots of bonus attack speed, and then some Obsidian statues behind in order to heal him up, alongside with the Death Coil of the Death Knight. It's a very fun strategy, it's definitely non-meta, but if you get to trying it out, you're gonna have a lot of fun with it. Let's talk about Pitlord's statistics. Pitlord is a strength hero, which means that aside from the usual strength, agility and intelligence bonuses, he draws bonus damage points in his primary basic attack from bonus points in strength. His starting strength is 26, gaining 3.2 per level. He has 16 agility at level 1, gaining 1.3 only per level. And he has a starting intelligence of 14, gaining 1.5 per level. So he has by far the most strength gain, after already being the hero in the entire game that starts with the most health. His basic attack cooldown, or BCD, base cooldown time, is 2.05. What this means is basically the lower the BCD is, the better the Pitlord can make use of attack speed buffs, which includes agility, gloves of haste and more. To put this into perspective, the Pitlord ranks rank 13 out of the 24 available heroes in Warcraft 3 on being able to make use attack speed and agility. This puts him above heroes like Mountain King, Alchemist and Panda, but below heroes like Warden, Demon Hunter and Blade Master. His turn rate is 0.4, which is the same as Tauren Chieftain and Beastmaster, which means he's just kind of standard and, well, actually, I tried to figure out exactly what turn rate means and how it's calculated. It does, and I found this really old 2017 forum post that explains exactly how, and even when I read it 10 times, I still didn't understand how the hell they managed to program turn speed. It is definitely not clear. It constitutes acceleration, deceleration, it constitutes 960 degrees of turning in a single second, but then you've got the wind up and the slowdown and the turn rate, and really, I think you just best read it for yourself and you're not probably gonna get it either. Pitlord has an attack range of 100, which is melee, same as Blade Master. His sight range is standard at 1800/800 at night. His movement speed is 300, which puts him at an average movement speed compared to the other Tavern Heroes that range between 290 and 320. His armor at level 1 is 3 armor. In fact, it's more like 2.8 armor. Actually, it's 2.8, but it rounds up to 3. Which is a pretty good starting armor. Alchemist, by comparison, has 1 armor, so he's got quite a bit more armor than that, and that's with a very high starting health. His starting damage is 28 to 38 damage, with an average of 33. His starting health is 750. That makes him rank 1 out of all 24 heroes in Warcraft 3, and the highest starting health at level 1. And the other Tavern Heroes that are close to him have 725 health. His starting mana is 210, which is the shared lowest starting mana in the game alongside Pitlord. So they're shared rank 23 out of 24. Let's talk about common skill builds. The Pitlord has several skill builds. The most standard one is to go Howl and Cleave, prioritizing Cleave. That makes him a tank and an auto attacker with a support ability that drops enemy damage. Against human, as I mentioned, you sometimes see Rain of Fire into Cleave, where you prioritize Rain of Fire in order to harass human casters, towers and peasants, and then having Cleave as a fallback ability. Against undead, you might want to prioritize Rain of Fire and Cleave, with Cleave being the most important one, as Howl of Terror can be dispelled by enemy destroyers, which will gain them health and mana. So you might want to avoid using Howl against undead if they have destroyers. Otherwise you would go with the standard, which is Howl and Cleave, prioritizing Cleave. What are the primary objectives of the Pitlord in a general game? Does he prefer to harass, creep, play aggressive or defensive? Well, Pitlord tends to require vast amounts of creeping to scale up in level. He is pretty okay at level 1, as I mentioned his starting stats are impressive, but he doesn't have any particular finesse that allows you to do specific things in the game, such as using Hex to lock someone down, turn invisible like the Blades in order to get secret scouting, or to have Death Coil like a Death Knight to keep your units alive. Anytime you need any of those things that I just mentioned, Pitlord cannot do any of that. He just reduces enemy damage. He just deals damage. There's no finesse to him. There's no stuns, hexes, lockdown, aura, etc. Because of this, he's a pretty poor starting hero as a first. If you do get him as a first or second or third, generally you're going to want to creep him up to get more permanent item buffs and more levels. As a slower hero that shines best when he can perform many auto attacks, Pitlord greatly benefits from boots of speed to reposition for optimal attacks, leveraging Cleave to the max. And while a Rain of Fire Pitlord at level 1 can do 1 or 2 casts of the spell, then you run out of juice. So trying to use like a level 1 Pitlord to harass enemy worker lines, he's quickly gonna run out of juice and he won't have a game plan to fall back on. So whether he's taken as a first or second, you're gonna want to have a robust creeping plan in order to make Pitlord the best he can possibly be. How to use Pitlord in battle? Well, try to get in a good position to cast a good Howl of Terror to position optimally to affect the most amount of units, as it does not have infinite range. Then reposition for cleaving attacks to hit the most amount of different units. You can easily kill highly armored targets, like heroes or knights, by not attacking them. It is easier to get more damage on the Demon Hunter by cleaving into him with Cleave level 3 than by attacking the Demon Hunter directly. Since you apply 90% of your base damage, which is completely unmitigated by armor type, armor amount, or evasion, you should not directly attack the demon if you want to kill the demon. Next, the Pitlord is rather large, so he is going to get body blocked quite easily. Make sure you don't body block your own Pitlord in the front lines, preventing him from escaping if he gets focused. Although Pitlord is very tanky, he might be focused, as leaving him alive for a long time doing his cleaves could provide a devastating effect on the health of the enemy units. So they're going to want to take care of the Pitlord fast by slowing him, stunning him, and maybe killing him. He might be a focused target, so try to create a clean line of escape for him. Popular consumables for the Pitlord, there aren't that many. I don't know which race you're going to be taking Pitlord with, so I cannot say which racial consumables are going to be most effective for him. But the one consumable that Pitlord likes most of all is going to be a Potion of Lesser Invulnerability. As he likes to do as many auto attacks as possible, it behooves the opponent to curse him, slow him, hex him, stun him, and none of those things are possible if he has a Potion of Lesser Invulnerability on him that is used at the right time. For just 150 gold, he becomes unkillable, and it can be sure to apply maximum auto attacks during those 7 seconds of invulnerability. Try to always carry one. We can be a bit more expansive on the desirable permanent items that you hope to find or would like to purchase. The best ones for Pitlord include such things as Boots of Speed, allowing him to reposition to do the best possible cleaves, and to also wade in and out of combat more effectively. As he is a melee hero, he needs to close the gap to any ranged armies. He likes Ring of Protection. Ring of Protection with armor is most effective on heroes that have low natural armor or on the lower end. He also has a large health pool, so giving him any armor gives him a very large amount of bonus effective physical health, or PEHP, physical effective health points. Pitlord also loves to have things like Talisman of Evasion to completely dodge a certain amount of attacks, and you love to give him bonus damage in order to make Cleave the most dangerous it can possibly be if you're going for the Cleave spec. This includes things like Gloves of Haste plus 18%, Claws of Attack of any kind, and any strength and agility boosting stats such as Belt of Giant Strength or Boots of Quel'Thalas, giving 6 bonus strength and agility respectively. From the buffs component, you would like to have things like Bloodlust, Spirit Link, Unholy Frenzy, Roar, Unholy Aura, Endurance Aura, and Command Aura. As many as you can provide without going too crazy on trying to support a single hero, as you need to consider the overall balance of your army and strategy, of course. You can counter the Pitlord by kiting him and slowing him. You can also spread out your army to take less damage from cleave and from rain of fire, and to get less affected by Howl of Terror as well. Additionally, you can provide Dispel Magic to offset the effects of Howl of Terror. We had a very large list of tricks for Blade Master. Different tricks he could do with different abilities, Windwalk bugs, Bladestorm bugs, etc. We don't have a list like that for the Pitlord. He's pretty straightforward. The most difficult to use is Doom, but he really lacks finesse. He's got just a few tricks. As I mentioned, for cleaving attack, you can bypass enemy armor. So that is a trick, I guess. There is a trick with Undead where when you use Howl of Terror, you can use destroyers to remove the debuff of Howl of Terror from enemy units. Normally, destroyers, when they do Devour Magic, they gain health and gain mana by removing buffs from enemies and debuffs from oneself. But for some reason, Howl of Terror on enemies, which is a debuff, can be removed by your own destroyers in order to generate health and mana from that. Because Howl of Terror lasts 12 seconds, you can try to aim a Devour Magic on enemy Howl of Terror at the 10 or 11 second mark of its cast, and thereby generating bonus health and mana for your destroyers. When it comes to Doom, you can Doom one of your own units. One cool trick that you can do that's totally going to happen, definitely, really, you have to believe me, please, is Doom one of your own units, then heal it up by layering several Staffs of Sanctuary effects on that unit. You can also send it to a healing fountain, and you can use priests to heal that unit as well. If the unit is human, then you can also heal it with Paladin Holy Light. As a result, you can try to forestall and delay the 40 HP per second decay rate. And you can bridge the gap between the 120 second cooldown of Doom and the 120 second duration of the Doom Guard that will eventually spawn. In doing so, you can amass a veritable army of Doom Guards by killing your own units, but then extending their life span by continually healing them. Eventually, you could have an extremely viable strategy, which is called the Burning Legion Invasion, and it works best in Imagination Land. The final trick is one that is more of a counter than a trick. If a flying unit has gotten doomed, you can fly it over the water in order to deny it a legal landing spot for the Doom Guard that will eventually pop out. This will create an effect akin to a downed Zeppelin that is fully equipped with units inside, and as you all know what happens to units in a Zeppelin over water, everything dies. This Doom Guard never even spawns, in fact. So be careful about dooming an enemy air unit, because they could fly it over impassable terrain such as trees or water, and you will never get a Doom Guard. Luckily, this is not possible to be done against a ground unit. You may wonder, can the ground unit go into a Zeppelin and then provide the same denial? This is actually not possible. Doomed units cannot go into Zeppelins. Alright, that was my dissertation on the Pitlord. Hopefully you learned something, or at the very least you were entertained by the information within. I hope you'll be enjoying using the Pitlord. I hope you enjoyed it. Which hero do you want to see next? There's 22 heroes left. We can go in any order, and we never know if we're going to be doing all 22, so make sure to get your favorite ones out there first in the next hero spotlight. Let me know in the comments below. And if you got this far and you enjoyed it, please hit me up with a subscribe so you can see more content like this. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Cheers.